Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 2 Chronicles, the 24th chapter. And so in the 23rd chapter, right, we dealt with the death of Athaliah and the coronation of Joash, right, the king, the one who was delivered from death, that at the time when Athaliah slew the rest of the heirs to the throne. And here in the 24th chapter, we start to see what kind of king, right, Joash becomes from in his reign, right, from his youth up until the end of his reign. So this is the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 24, verse 1. It says here, Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name also was Zibiah of Beersheba. And Joash did that which was right in the sight of the Lord Yahweh all the days of Jehoiada the priest. And Jehoiada took for him 2 wives, and he begat sons and daughters. Now keep in mind, right, this was, once again, what we're reading of here is a span of a long duration of time, right? Because he begins his reign at 7 years old, and between verse 1, 2, and 3, where he already is begetting sons, there's been a good amount of years that have come to pass, right? So just keep that in mind. And it came to pass after this that Joash was minded to repair the house of the Lord Yahweh. So at this point, he's of age, you can say. And he gathered together the priests and the Levites, and said to them, Go out unto the cities of Judah, and gather of all Israel, money to repair the house of your God from year to year, and see that ye hasten the matter. Howbeit the Levites hastened it not. And you can imagine this not being one of, not per se like the king commands them to go do this, and then it's like, oh, after the king, we ain't gonna do this. But more so like something that is on their plate to do, but then they just never get to it, right? And so that's why it says they hasten it not. So time goes by, right? Time goes by. And eventually, right, verse 6, And the king called for Jehoiada the chief, and said unto him, Why is thou not required of the Levites to bring in out of Judah and out of Jerusalem the collection, according to the commandment of Moses, the servant of the Lord Yahweh, and of the congregation of Israel, for the tabernacle of witness? What's going on? Well, I told you guys to get the stuff that we need, the money to repair. What's happening here? Now, going back to this collection, right, according to the commandment of Moses, I believe we went through this when we covered this in the book of Kings, but also this is the very importance, right, of why, when you read the book of Kings, it's also important to read the book of Chronicles with it, right? And that can be, you can read the entire book of Kings and then read the entire book of Chronicles, first and second, or you can try to find the parallels, right? Like what chapter matches with what chapter and read it that way, whatever is best for you. But there are some blanks that get filled in when you read the book of Chronicles, right? So it's essential to read all those books so you get the full picture, and not just the high level of, okay, this happened here, but what was the cause of this, right? What really happened? So we'll see some examples of that in this chapter as well. But when we do a cross-reference here for this verse, right, we can see here we get Exodus, the 30th chapter here, dealing with the collection. So I'll read a little bit of it, and then we can go back to 2 Chronicles. So Exodus chapter 30, verse 12. When thou takest the sum of the children of Israel after their number, then shall they give every man a ransom for his soul, unto the Lord, when thou numberest them, that there be no plague among them when thou numberest them. So I believe this was the Lord speaking unto Moses. And they shall give every one that passeth among them that are numbered half a shekel, after the shekel of the sanctuary. A shekel is 20 gerahs, and half shekel shall be the offering of the Lord Yahweh. Every one that passeth among them that are numbered from 20 years old and above shall give an offering unto the Lord Yahweh. The rich shall not give more, and the poor shall not give less than half a shekel, when they give an offering unto the Lord Yahweh to make an atonement for your souls. Now, when you read this here, so I believe this is what they were referring to over here. But when you read in another translation, as an example, like the NLT, right, it says, so the king called for Jehoiada and the high priest and asked him, why haven't you demanded the Levites go out and collect the temple taxes from the towns of Judah and from Jerusalem? Moses, the servant of the Lord, levied this tax on the community of Israel in order to maintain the tabernacle of the covenant. So I believe that might have been the what we read in Exodus, where it was being referenced. If not, then it might be a different reference point. But long story short, the king is inquiring as to why this hasn't been done yet. Verse 7. So back to the dialogue between Joash and Jehoiada here. For the sons of Athaliah, that wicked woman, had broken up the house of God, and also all the dedicated things of the house of the Lord Yahweh did they bestow upon Baalim. So all the gold, the silver, the good things. So you get some insight into what was happening during the reign of Athaliah, right? The sanctified things of the temple of the Lord they took, and you can imagine they put those and used towards the worship of Baal or Baalim. And where we at? Right, and as it says here, they broke up the house of God. So they didn't take care of the temple, right? They didn't care. Verse 8. And at the king's commandment, they made a chest and set it without at the gate of the house of the Lord Yahweh. And they made a proclamation through Judah and Jerusalem to bring into the Lord, the collection that Moses, the servant of God, laid upon Israel in the wilderness. And all the princes and all the people rejoiced and brought in and cast into the chest until they had made an end. Now it came to pass that at what time the chest was brought onto the king's office by the hand of the Levites, and when they saw that there was much money, the king's scribe and the high priest's officer came and emptied the chest and took it and carried it to his place again. So they would, when Israel would come, they would drop that given amount, right? I believe it was a half shekel or so, into the chest as a collection. And when the chest was full, the king's officer, right, the king's scribe and the high priest officer would take it back, empty the chest basically, and then take it back to the king. And then they would do with it what they needed to do, in this case, to repair the temple. Thus they did day by day, and gathered money in abundance. And the king and Jehoiada gave it to such as did the work of the service of the house of God, or of the house of the Lord, and hired masons and carpenters to repair the house of the Lord, and also such as wrought iron and brass to mend the house of the Lord. Because keep in mind, yes, this was a glorious temple, but it was still a building at the end of the day, and therefore it needed to be maintained. All right. So there might be breaches here and there, over time. That's what happens if you don't keep up the building and the maintenance. And you can see that was neglected during the reign of Athaliah. So here they're repairing it, which is good. Verse 13. So the workmen wrought, and the work was perfected by them, and they set the house of God in his state, and strengthened it. And when they had finished it, they brought the rest of the money before the king and Jehoiada, whereof were made vessels of the house of the Lord Yahweh, even vessels to minister, and to offer withal, and spoons, and vessels of gold and silver. And you can imagine these would be, of course, in the temple, there were things that you needed, right? You needed the ladles, you needed the knives, you needed the incense, uh, the censers, right? You needed the different things that were needed, both reusable ones, right, and also perishable ones, right? Like incense that you're burning, right? Different, if you're gonna be burning a fire, there's things you need to keep the fire going, right? All of these different things, then you needed to keep up with that in order to maintain the ministry, right, or the ministering of the Levites in there. If they're going to sacrifice an animal, they need things that they use, right, to cut the animal, and so on, right? So all of these things, the vessels, the spoons, the forks, all that stuff, they needed to take into account. And they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord Yahweh continually all the days of Jehoiada. But Jehoiada waxed old, and was full of days when he died. 130 years old was he when he died. So Jehoiada had played a very, very good role here, right, in preserving the lineage of King David here, taking care of Joash, guiding him, leading him, basically being like a father unto him. So while he was alive, they continued, he kept that good influence on them, and so they continued in the ways of the Lord. But eventually he died of old age. Verse 16. And they buried him in the city of David among the kings, because he had done good in Israel, both toward God and toward his house. Now after the death of Jehoiada came the princes of Judah, and made obeisance to the king. Then the king hearkened unto them. So these princes were like, right, people that were in high positions. And they came, bowed to the king. And when it says the king hearkened unto them, you hearken when somebody is trying to say something to you or talk to you, and you're taking heed to what they're saying. So you can imagine here, with Jehoiada gone, these princes came and got to the ear of the king, right, so to speak. And so they started influencing the king, and he started taking heed to their influences. Verse 18, and they left the house of God, or house of the Lord Yahweh, God of their fathers, and served groves and idols. And wrath came upon Judah and Jerusalem for this their trespass. So the things the king was hearkening on to led to the falling away of serving the Lord of Israel, right, of Judah. And he sent prophets to them to bring them again unto the Lord, and they testified against them, but they would not give ear. Just like today. So the Lord saw this, he sent prophets, the prophets came, they prophesied, they tested, they told him, look, you're not supposed to be doing this. What happened to serving the Lord? Look at what you're doing now. They did not hear it. Verse 20. And the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, the priest, which stood above the people, and said unto them. So this was Jehoiada, the son of Jehoiada, right? The same Jehoiada that we just read about, that raised up Joash. So his son, the Spirit of the Lord, comes upon him, and he says to them, Thus saith the Lord God, Why transgress ye the commandments of the Lord, that ye cannot prosper? Because ye have forsaken the Lord, he hath also forsaken you. And they conspired against him, and stoned him with stones at the commandment of the king in the court of the house of the Lord Yahweh. Thus Joash the king remembered not the kindness which Jehoiada his father had done to him, but slew his son. And when he died, he said, "The Lord look upon it and require it." And this is a very despicable thing, right, to be done here, because Zechariah, being the son of Jehoiada, right, he was a priest or a Levite, and his father had done all these good deeds, right? As a matter of fact, it was his father, by the hand of his father, obviously the Spirit of the Lord above all, that saved Joash's life, took care of him, protected him, made sure everything was good, kept him on the right path. And he ends up slaying his son, right, for calling him out against that wickedness. So, continuing here. So at the death of Zechariah, he asked the Lord, "Lord, you see this wickedness, for me speaking rightly in your words against them, require it. Avenge it. Don't let my blood go, unavenged." And it came to pass at the end of the year that the host of Syria came up against him, against Joash. And they came to Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the princes of the people from among the people, and sent all the spoil of them unto the king of Damascus. So the Lord brought judgment upon those wicked princes. For the army of the Syrians came with a small company of men, and the Lord Yahweh delivered a very great host into their hand. So this was the working of the Lord, because he had the Syrians come with only a small amount, and yet they were able to take out so many, because they had forsaken the Lord God of their fathers. So they executed judgment against Joash. And when they were departed from him, so they didn't kill him, right? But they did leave him in a painful state. They whooped his ass. And when they were departed from him, for they left him in great diseases. The diseases here is not in the common sense of when you think of the word disease, you think of some illness in the sense of a cold, or like a STD or something like that, right? When it says disease here, it means injuries, right? So they beat him up, beat him pretty bad, right? He's hurt real bad. So they left him in a bad state. And as it says here, and when they were departed from him, his own servants conspired against him. And we read this in the book of Kings. Right, his own servants conspired against him for the blood of the sons of Jehoiada the priest, and slew him on his bed, and he died. And they buried him in the city of David, but they buried him not in the sepulchres of the kings. So keep in mind, when we read this in the book of Kings, so you can see the reference over here, it didn't specify the reason as to why his servants smote him, right? Or the details of that. So in fact, if I pull up the book of Kings here, let's even go up a little bit here. Let's see. Gold and in the king's house, and sent it to Hazael. And yep. And we went up above. Let's see. Yeah. So when you read in the book of Kings, right, you don't get the detail of Jehoiada's death, Jehoiada's son speaking against Joash, and the wicked way that Joash went in, and the slaying of Jehoiada's son, and maybe his other sons, right? Because here we read about the sons of Jehoiada the priest that were slain by the hand of Joash. So here you get some insight into what did he do, right? What were some things that he was doing? And now you see the real reason why his servants conspired against him and put him to death. All right. So without this context, you might think, oh, Joash was a good king. He was pretty decent, right? Like, he served the Lord, he rebuilt the temple, and then he was assassinated by his servants. But now you see the context as to why. And so very realistically, right, the Lord put the Spirit upon these servants to put him to death remember, upon the death of Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada, he asked the Lord to look upon this and require it. So those princes were put to death, and now judgment was executed upon Joash. And rightfully so, they didn't bury him in the sepulchres of the kings. Verse 26, and these are they that conspired against him: Zabad, the son of Shimeath, an Ammonitess, and Jehozabad, the son of Shimrith, a Moabitess. Now concerning his sons, and let's take a look here. This is interesting to me. Okay, all right. So according to what we're reading here in 2 Chronicles 24 and 26, this is a Moabite and an Ammonite that conspired and put to death Joash. Now concerning his sons and the greatness of the burdens laid upon him, and the repairing of the house of God, behold, they are written in the story of the book of the kings. And Amaziah his son reigned in his stead. And this is the end of the book of 2 Chronicles, the 24th chapter. So as we saw in here, right, we had the beginning of the reign of Joash, which, as long as Jehoiada was there to guide him, he did that which was right. But after the death of Jehoiada, the priest, he got influenced, right? Joash, that is, being influenced by the wicked princes of Israel, ended up going in the way of idolatry. And when he was reproved by the son of Jehoiada, he ends up putting him to death. So as a result, the Lord brings judgment upon him and those wicked princes. So we see here that though his earlier reign was right, his latter reign was not. Anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.